Part 8. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 71. Liaodong, Dragon City. Taishi Ci looked at the densely packed Goguryeo army outside the city as far as the eye could see, with an extremely solemn expression. Goguryeo invaded Liaodong, but the resistance of the Liaodong prefect was not high. Countless Goguryeo troops poured into Liaodong, burning, killing and looting. It was even more cruel than the previous alien riots in Liaodong. In order to rescue the people, Taishi Ci led the Longcheng cavalry to hunt down small Goguryeo troops many times. Seeing this scene, the people of Liaodong came to Longcheng one after another in order to avoid the massacre by the Goguryeo army. They knew that perhaps the only one in Liaodong that could protect their safety was Dragon City. However, although Taishi Ci killed many Goguryeo troops and saved many people, but this also attracted the attention of the commander of the Goguryeo army, who sent a deputy commander to lead an army of 50,000 to attack Longcheng. The combat effectiveness of the Goguryeo army was much stronger than that of the aliens from Liaodong. But this is not what worries Taishi Ci. What worries him most is that many of the 50,000 troops are obviously Han troops in disguise. Did the governor of Liaodong really collude with Goguryeo and want to destroy Dragon City? If that were the case, that would be troublesome. Although Longcheng's army was powerful in combat, it only had more than 4,000 people. It would be very difficult to defend Dragon City against an enemy 10 times his size. The most important thing is whether there are any enemy spies among the refugees pouring into Dragon City. If there are spies who cooperate with the enemy inside and outside, that will be the biggest trouble. In order to prevent this situation from happening, Taishi Ci ordered that no villagers were allowed to approach the city gate. Anyone who disobeys the order will be killed without mercy. Woo! The Goguryeo army outside the city sounded the horn of attack. 8,000 vanguard cavalry arrived first. Wei soldiers loaded crossbows and longbow soldiers prepared to shoot. In order to reduce casualties, Taishi Ci did not let Wei soldiers go out of the city to kill the enemy. Wei soldiers were powerful in combat, but there were only 600 of them after all. They were the treasure of Dragon City. Even if one of them was injured, he would not be able to see his lord. So, he arranged the Wei soldiers on the city wall and guard the city wall together with the longbowmen. It can protect both the Wei soldiers and the longbowmen. After all, the longbowmen are better at long-range attacks. If the enemy attacks the city wall, they will inevitably not damage occurred. The melee combat ability of Wei soldiers was abnormal. Together with the longbowmen, they could take care of each other and greatly reduce casualties. As for the 2,000 overlord cavalry, Taishi Ci arranged to fight the enemy outside the city. It was just seeing with these 2,000 cavalry, the Goguryeo deputy commander who attacked Longcheng sent out 8,000 cavalry. But he did not know that his decision was tantamount to sending these 8,000 Goguryeo cavalry to the guillotine. The attack mode of Wei Wu soldiers and longbowmen, Taishi Ci has already allocated them. There are 600 Wei soldiers, divided into 3 batches. In this way, each batch has enough attack power and allows all Wei soldiers to be seamlessly connected. It is guaranteed that crossbow arrows will fire at all times. 2 batches of 1,500 longbowmen, each batch of 750 people. It does not take too much time for the longbowmen to bend their bows and set arrows. 2 batches are enough. This can kill the enemy to the greatest extent. Although Wei the 12-stone crossbow of the martial soldiers has a longer range, but in order to maximize the lethality, naturally it cannot launch an attack at the farthest range. The longbow soldiers are different, they shoot diagonally upward. It does not require too much aiming. Just shoot at the place with the most enemies. Taishi Ci had extraordinary eyesight and estimated the distance between the Goguryeo cavalry and Dragon City. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed and he shouted, "Longbow soldiers, shoot!" The first batch of longbowmen who were ready to attack immediately bent their bows and set arrows, and launched the attack. 750 long arrows pierced the sky, poured down, and fell into the enemy group. Poof! The long arrows contained the power of it was very powerful and its penetrating power was very terrifying. The Goguryeo cavalry were mainly mobile and quick. The armor on their bodies was not heavy, and the defense was naturally not too high. The long arrow fell, easily penetrated their armor, and sank into their bodies. There was a pause. Time, screams were everywhere. The first round of attacks, because of the long distance, would not be very accurate. But even so, at least 300 people fell off their horses, and their casualties were unknown. At a distance of about 300 steps, the accuracy of the longbowmen was still close to 50%, which is terrible. Come again. Taishisi said in a deep voice. The second group of longbowmen quickly bent their bows and arrows and launched an attack. The first group of longbowmen quickly took out their long arrows and were ready to go. When the second round of attacks fell, the Goguryeo cavalry there are still more than 200 steps away from Dragon City. The accuracy of the longbowmen has improved, and nearly 400 people were shot down. Continue. The first batch of longbowmen bent their bows and arrows again and launched an attack. In this way, the long arrows in the air almost never disappeared. Dense rain of arrows poured down one after another. Screams resounded throughout the world. As the distance of the Goguryeo cavalry is getting closer and closer, and the accuracy of the longbowmen is getting higher and higher. After 4 rounds, the Goguryeo cavalry is only more than 150 steps away from Longcheng. Of the 8,000 Goguryeo cavalry, there are now only about 6,000 left. The real siege battle has not yet begun, and Goguryeo has already lost nearly 2,000 people. The longbowmen continue, and Weiwu soldiers join in the shooting. Following Taishisi's order, the crossbow arrows of the Wei warriors shot through the air. The crossbow arrows, longer and thicker than the long arrows, easily penetrated the bodies of the Goguryeo cavalry, and penetrated several enemies one after another without stopping. Has just been inserted into the ground. The lethality of Wei soldiers is more terrifying than that of longbow soldiers. Ida Euro trademark S great to read books on May Day. 3 Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 72. 3 groups of Wei warriors took turns shooting. When the Goguryeo cavalry was 50 steps away from Longcheng, they had already killed more than 1,000 people. However, the Goguryeo cavalry did not retreat. Because if you retreat at this time, the damage will be greater. Only by engaging the Dragon City army in close combat can the archers on the city be wary of shooting wildly. The distance of 50 steps can be reached almost instantly for the cavalry. It is not practical to use archers to attack again. Taishisi shouted in a deep voice, Overlord's Iron Cavalry, attack. Although Lu Feng changed the name of Overlord's Iron Cavalry to Dragon City's Iron Cavalry, Taishisi did not know that he still called it Overlord's Iron Cavalry. Outside the city gate, 2,000 Overlord's cavalry who were already ready to go got the order and galloped away immediately. When the Goguryeo cavalry commander saw this, he couldn't help but sneered. The heavy cavalry charge was indeed terrifying. But everyone knows that the speed of heavy cavalry is very slow. He started charging at this time, and before he could pick up the speed, he had already led the Goguryeo cavalry to charge over. The heavy cavalry whose charging speed is not increased are just a group of living targets. On the city wall, the longbowmen and Wei soldiers were still shooting at the left and right wings of the Goguryeo cavalry. The damage to the Goguryeo cavalry continues to increase. Rush! Kill it! The Goguryeo cavalry commander roared. Before the real confrontation with the Dragon City army, he had already lost nearly half of his troops. He had already suppressed his anger. Now, he will vent all his anger on this Dragon City army. On the heavy cavalry. However, he soon discovered to his horror that Longchen's heavy cavalry had accelerated in just 10 steps, and a terrifying charge had already swept through them. How can it be? The commander of the Goguryeo cavalry was extremely shocked. The speed was faster than them. Is this really a heavy cavalry? How did he know that the armor on the Overlord cavalry looked very heavy, but it was lighter than the armor of the Goguryeo cavalry? Naturally, the speed increased very quickly. At this time, the Goguryeo cavalry was less than 30 steps away from Longchen. Huh? What happened? The cavalry commander suddenly frowned. At that moment, he felt that the charging momentum of the cavalry he led was greatly reduced. Is it an illusion? He felt a little uneasy. This is the weak attack attribute of the Dragon City wall. Within 10 feet, the enemy's attack is reduced by 50%. The charging momentum of the cavalry also belongs to the attack attribute. If you enter within 10 feet of Dragon City, you will naturally be weakened by half. Kill. The Overlord's cavalry had already charged. The Goguryeo cavalry commander had no extra time to think and immediately attacked with weapons brandished. Only with good martial arts skills could he stand out among the Goguryeo cavalry and become the leader. However, when he launched the attack, but was shocked to find that the lethality of his martial arts was only half of the usual. And this half of the attack power was not enough to hurt the Overlord's cavalry. On the contrary, he was almost knocked away by an Overlord's cavalry because he did not estimate his attack power enough. The Goguryeo cavalry commander cheered up and launched an attack with all his strength. However, the lethality produced was still only half of the usual. What happened? The Goguryeo cavalry commander was horrified. Why is this happening? He couldn't understand it. Suddenly, shrill screams came from around him. He looked around and saw that the Longchen cavalry was wielding their spears and frantically killing the cavalry under his command. The spears killed instantly, which was extremely terrifying. In just one charge, more than half of the Goguryeo cavalry were injured. The cavalry under his command had no power to fight back. Even if someone occasionally hit the Dragon City cavalry, they could not be harmed at all. This is a huge gap from the combat effectiveness displayed by the cavalry under his command. Obviously, not only his own attack power was weakened. All the cavalry under his command also received the same treatment. There is something strange about this Dragon City. Withdraw. Escape. The Goguryeo cavalry commander did not dare to think about fighting, turned his horse's head, and galloped away. The Overlord's cavalry pursued them, leaving behind hundreds of enemy troops again. In the end, they stopped at the edge of 10 feet outside the Dragon City. Although they stopped, they pursued, but the attacks of Wei soldiers and longbow soldiers did not fall. When the Goguryeo cavalry commander ran 300 steps away, there were only less than 100 cavalry left around him. At this time, Taishi Ci took out his strongbow and shot the arrow shot out. The sharp arrow pierced the sky and penetrated the back of the Goguryeo cavalry commander at a distance of nearly 400 steps. 8,000 vanguard cavalry launched an attack on Longchen, but in the end only 100 cavalry escaped. Such horrific casualties made the Goguryeo deputy commander who was in charge of the Central Army was horrified. What happened? How many casualties did the Dragon City army suffer? The Goguryeo deputy commander asked in a deep voice. One of the Goguryeo cavalry said with a horrified look on his face, "Commander, that Dragon City is too scary. Its archers have a range of up to 300 paces. There are even more terrifying crossbow arrows, one of which can penetrate several cavalrymen. There are also 2,000 cavalry, which can speed up within 10 steps, and their combat effectiveness is very powerful. The most frightening thing is that after we entered within 30 steps of Dragon City, our lethality was inexplicably reduced by half." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 3 Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 73. Archers have a range of 300 paces. The lethality is reduced by half. The deputy commander of the Goguryeo army glared and shouted angrily, "Do you think I'm a fool? I have heard that crossbow arrows can penetrate several soldiers. But an archer with a range of 300 paces? How is it possible? Being close to the city wall, the lethality is reduced by half? This is even more impossible. Marshal, Ida Euro trademark S true." A few more cavalrymen said in unison, "These are all things we have seen and experienced with our own eyes, and they are absolutely unmistakable." The rest of the cavalry also agreed. The Goguryeo deputy commander frowned. Although he still felt unbelievable, the expressions of these cavalry did not seem to be fake. Could it be that the archers in Dragon City really have a shooting range of 300 steps? Approaching Dragon City, will the attack power really be weakened? Set up camp where you are to rest and reorganize your army. The deputy commander thought for a long time, but finally did not dare to approach Longcheng. He could only camp on the spot and think about countermeasures. Halfway up Tiger Mountain, a secret whistle immediately transmitted the movements of the Goguryeo army back to Longcheng. Taishi Ci finally breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, if the Goguryeo army continues to attack, he will have to adjust his strategy. All longbowmen and Wei soldiers participated in the shooting. Moreover, the continuous shooting consumes a lot of their physical strength. Especially longbowmen rely entirely on arm strength to pull the longbow. Such continuous shooting will definitely not last long. It would be really dangerous if the Goguryeo army attacked regardless of the cost. Fortunately, the terrifying combat effectiveness shown before shocked the Goguryeo army and gave the Dragon City army a chance to breathe. "I hope the Lord can come back soon." Taishi Ci looked in the direction of Luoyang. At the same time, the Taishao mansion in Xiangping City. The Liaodong prefect drank tea leisurely and said with a relaxed expression, "With 3,000 hundreds of battles and 7,000 elite divisions, no matter how powerful the Dragon City cavalry is, they can't escape their ambush. Another Goguryeo army destroyed Dragon City. I no longer have any worries." Gong Soon-do smiled and said, "Congratulations, sir, congratulations, sir. As soon as Lu Feng and Long Cheng are eliminated, we can immediately lead the army to suppress the Goguryeo army. By then, our plan can be implemented perfectly. Even if the Zhangjiao rebellion is put down, you can still control the 4 counties." The Liaodong prefect narrowed his eyes slightly. "Zhangjiao and Taipingdao are also useless. The yellow turbans are all over the states, but they were suppressed so easily. However, it was somewhat useful to have the Han dynasty suffer heavy losses." Gong Soon-do agreed. "Yes, the Han dynasty is busy suppressing the remnants of the yellow turbans in various places, and they definitely don't have the extra energy to pay attention to the Liaodong war. Their only support is Lu Fenghe Dragon City. When it was discovered that Lu Feng and Long Cheng were dead, they had to distribute food and equipment so that we could resist on our own. At that time, it was time for the adults to rise." Ha 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 ha. The governor of Liaodong looked up to the sky and laughed, as if he had seen his most glorious moment. Controlling Liaodong, taking over Suantu, Liaodong's vassal state, and the 3 counties of Lelang, wouldn't it be a joy to be a local emperor in a borderland? Report. At this moment, a messenger rushed over, informed the prefect, Lieutenant Lu Feng of Liaodong County, and came straight to the prefect's mansion with 1,000 Dragon City cavalry. At this time, the imperial edict has not spread throughout the world, and few people know that Lu Feng has been named the governor of Liaodong. What? The governor of Liaodong and Gong Soon-do stood up suddenly, their faces extremely ugly. Lu Feng actually came back safe and sound? 1,000 Dragon City cavalry were also unscathed? How is this possible? That is the master of 3,000 battles. He has been the master of nearly 3,000 battles over the years. Cultivated with all the hard work. There are also 7,000 elite divisions to assist. How can it be impossible to defeat the 1,000 Dragon City Iron Cavalry? Is it possible that these 1,000 Dragon City Iron Cavalry are extraordinary divisions? No, it is impossible. How long ago was the Dragon City Iron Cavalry established? How could it be possible to reach the realm of an extraordinary master? There must be a secret that he didn't know. He looked at the messenger and said in a deep voice, "Why don't you intercept them outside Xiangping City? Tens of thousands of troops, and 1,000 people are allowed to break into Xiangping City. Why should I support you?" The messenger smiled bitterly and said, "Sir, Lu Feng is a lieutenant of Liaodong County. We can't intercept him." The governor of Liaodong was suddenly speechless. Only then did he remember that Lu Feng was a lieutenant of Liaodong County, and his position was second only to his own. "My lord, Lu Feng intends to commit a crime. He must quickly gather his troops to encircle and destroy him." Gong Sun Du said in a deep voice with a cold look in his eyes. "Yes, yes, yes, send my order to Liaodong County Lieutenant Lu Feng and his subordinates. Order all the troops in Xiangping City to gather at the prefecture and kill Lu Feng." The governor of Liaodong also reacted quickly and said loudly. As the order was conveyed, countless troops from Xiangping City quickly moved closer to the governor's mansion. The governor of Liaodong and Gong Sun Du also came outside the governor's mansion and stood among the army, waiting for Lu Feng's arrival. Soon, a group of black shadows came quickly and appeared in front of everyone in an instant. It was Lu Feng, the captain of Liaodong County, and the world-famous Qinlongqing cavalry. "Yo! So grand!" Lu Feng turned over and dismounted, with a sneer on his face. The governor did not send troops to resist the Goguryeo army, but instead gathered so many troops in the governor's mansion. Why? He has never seen the Liaodong prefect, but there was only one person wearing official uniform in the audience. He must be the Liaodong prefect. The Liaodong prefect said coldly, "Liaodong County Lieutenant Lu Feng and below have committed crimes with evil intentions. Follow my orders and kill them." He didn't want to waste any words and directly issued a kill order. After receiving the order, the troops gathered outside the prefect's mansion immediately drew their weapons and attacked. The Qinlongqing cavalry behind them raised their spears, waiting for the Lord's order. Then he charged forward and killed all the enemies. Lu Feng sneered, took out an imperial edict, and shouted, "This is the edict, who dares to touch it?" The Xiangping City army suddenly stopped a few feet away. Looking at the imperial edict, they were a little at a loss. Lu Feng held up the imperial edict, walked step by step in front of the Liaodong prefect, and said coldly, "Why don't you show courtesy in front of the imperial edict?" The Liaodong governor's face was gloomy. Although he was unwilling to do so, he had to bow and salute. The emperor of the Han dynasty summoned Lu Feng, the captain of Liaodong County, to kill the three brothers Zhang Xiao, Zhang Bao, and Zhang Liang. He suppressed the Yellow Turban rebels and promoted our great Han dynasty. He was promoted to the governor of Liaodong on that day. On the day he took office, Li Fei, the former governor of Liaodong who had colluded with other ethnic groups, was arrested and brought to justice, and the 9 ethnic groups were exterminated. Admire this. After reciting the imperial edict, Li Fei, the former governor of Liaodong, turned pale as a sheet. He murmured feebly to himself, "I did not collude with foreigners, I did not collude with foreigners." Gong Sun Du behind him lowered his head, his face extremely ugly. He sent someone to report the charges against the Liaodong prefect, and asked him to bribe Zhang Rang, the head of the 10 permanent servants. He thought that his election as the prefect was foolproof, but unexpectedly something happened. The imperial court knew that the Liaodong governor had colluded with foreign tribes, and he had obviously accepted his guilt. But all of this was in vain to benefit Lu Feng. He lost money, but did not get what he wanted. One can imagine the depression in his heart. At this time, Li Fei, the former governor of Liaodong, suddenly laughed crazily. Haha, so what if there is an imperial edict? As long as I kill you, who will know that you came to convey the imperial edict? I can completely blame the Goguryeo army for your death. Lu Feng, you can't even think of leaving Xiangping city today. All the soldiers obeyed the order and killed him for me. The soldiers in Xiangping city looked at each other, a little at a loss. They didn't know whether to listen to their old boss. That was an imperial edict. Anyone who disobeyed the imperial edict would kill the 9 tribes. Didn't you hear my order? Kill him. Seeing that no one was moving, Li Fei looked like he was crazy and roared hysterically. Lu Feng said coldly, come here, get Li Fei for me. Li Fei looked up to the sky and laughed. They were all trained by me, how could they obey your orders? Lu Feng turned around, looked at the soldiers in Xiangping city, and said coldly, I am the prefect, who dares to disobey me? The soldiers in Xiangping city looked at each other, then rushed forward and detained Li Fei. What are you doing? Li Fei roared angrily, you are all trained by me. Without me, you are nothing. A group of people eat everything inside and out, repay kindness with hatred, and die badly. All the soldiers in Xiangping city lowered their heads. But Lu Feng sneered, did you train him? What did you use to grow it? The salary of the imperial court? Or the stolen money from the common people? Those who were trained with imperial salary should serve the imperial court. Those who were cultivated with the people's money should protect the people. Which one did you do? The Dragon City cavalry obeyed the orders of Li Fei, the former Tianshao of Liaodong. He deceived his superiors and deceived his subordinates, colluded with foreign tribes, harmed the common people, and should be punished by the 9 tribes. Execute now. Promise. Thousands of Dragon City cavalry forced their way into the prefect's mansion and killed everyone who had anything to do with Li Fei. Lu Feng, you bastard, I will fight you. Li Fei's eyes were red, and his spirit collapsed instantly. He broke away from several soldiers, pulled out the weapon of one of the soldiers, and rushed towards Lu Feng. Lu Feng sneered and was about to kill him when he saw a big knife suddenly passed through the back of Li Fei's heart. Li Fei's eyes widened and he turned his head with difficulty, his face full of disbelief. Euro. Before he finished speaking, he saw the man draw out his big sword and said in a cold voice, how dare you assassinate the prefect, it is not a pity to die. Li Fei's eyes widened and he fell on his back, dying with his eyes open. He never thought that he would die at the hands of Gong Sun Du, whom he trusted most. Gong Sun Du threw away his sword and bowed respectfully to Lu Feng. Gong Sun Du, a common man, has met the prefect. He just saw Li Fei trying to assassinate him, so he took action to kill him. Please forgive me for my rudeness. Gong Sun Du. Lu Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. Exactly. Gong Sun Du still lowered his head respectfully. Lu Feng looked at Gong Sun Du carefully for a moment and asked, what are you doing here, Gong Sun? Du's attitude was very humble and respectful. Returning to your lord, the Goguryeo army invaded Liaodong. Du saw that the Liaodong army was unable to suppress it, so he came to ask the prefect, no. Does Li Fei need help? Unexpectedly, Li Fei colluded with foreigners and killed the people. If he had known this earlier, Du would never have come here. Only 2 people knew about his plan with the Liaodong governor. The rest, not even the Liaodong commander-in-chief and the other Liaodong captains knew anything about it. 3 Kingdoms, I have a job transfer palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 74. Yet. Lu Feng was non-committal. Gong Sun Du said respectfully, what Du said is absolutely true. I asked the eunuch to investigate carefully. Lu Feng smiled and said, since Mr. Gong Sun has this intention, I am very pleased. Now that the Goguryeo army has spread throughout the county, a counterattack must be launched immediately. As the saying goes, before the 3 armies move, food and grass go first. I wonder if Mr. Gongsun can raise 10,000 stones of food and grass for me, and enough money to make 10,000 weapons. Gongsun Du didn't expect Lu Feng to be so open-minded. He wanted to refuse, but he was afraid of offending Lu Feng. This Lu Feng is not Li Fei, and he is not that easy to fool. Thinking of this, Gongsun Du gritted his teeth and said, "Please don't worry, the prefect, Du will definitely raise enough money and food as soon as possible to do his meager part to expel the aliens." "So very good." Lu Feng nodded. "If you have nothing else to do, go and collect food first. I hope Mr. Gongsun will not break his promise." "Don't dare." Gongsun Du clasped his fists and bowed to leave. Looking at Gongsun Du's back, Lu Feng showed a sneer on his face. Naturally, he didn't believe what Gongsun Du said. But Gongsun Du behaved very well, so that he couldn't find any excuse to take action. Killing Li Fei was an order. Although Gongsun Du had no official position, he was the legitimate son of the Gongsun family of Liaodong. If he was killed for no reason, he would probably anger the Gongsun family of Liaodong. The leader of the Liaodong family. If it were normal times, Lu Feng would naturally not be afraid. But now there are Goguryeo troops all over the territory of Liaodong. If the Liaodong family is behind them at this time, it will be very troublesome. Therefore, Lu Feng took the opportunity to kill Gongsun Du with a knife and collect them first. Some interest. After the Goguryeo army is defeated, we can slowly settle the accounts with him. Soon, the Dragon City cavalry massacred the prefect's mansion. Lu Feng said in a deep voice, "Pass this official order, Goguryeo invaded Liaodong and killed our Han people. Liaodong, all officers and soldiers in the county can launch a counterattack. Those who disobey military orders will be killed without mercy. Promise." Immediately, messengers rushed away to convey the orders of the new governor to the entire Liaodong county. Then Lu Feng looked at the Xiangping city army and said, "As a Han army, we turned a blind eye to the Goguryeo invasion and allowed it to harm the Han people. You are trampling on the dignity of my Han dynasty. You are not worthy of being part of the Han army. But I hope you will obey orders, and I will not care about it for the time being. If you can kill the enemy bravely this time, I will let the past go. If you slack off again, you will definitely be killed without mercy." The soldiers lowered their heads with shame on their faces. Lu Feng looked at the leading general and said, "General, Xiangping city is listening to the order. I ask you to immediately lead 30,000 elite troops to suppress the Goguryeo forces within Xiangping County as quickly as possible. The army must not make mistakes. Promise." The general took the order, then he thought for a while and said, "Sir, Li Fei once mobilized a total of 20,000 people from nearby counties, mixed them into the Goguryeo army, and went to Longcheng. It was said that they would launch a surprise attack when the Goguryeo army attacked Longcheng and wipe out the 30,000 Goguryeo army in one fell swoop. Now that I think about it, those 20,000 people probably joined forces with the Goguryeo army to attack Longcheng. Li Fei should have a military talisman on him. You can use the military talisman to order the army to rebel, and you can catch the Goguryeo army by surprise." A hint of coldness flashed in Lu Feng's eyes, and he said, "I know, you go ahead." The guard clasped his fists and quickly selected 30,000 elite soldiers from the Xiangping city army to go out. The rest were all guarding Xiangping city. Afterwards, Lu Feng galloped away with 1,000 Dragon City cavalry. Before they arrived at Dragon City, he could see the dense military camps. Lu Feng breathed a sigh of relief. At least the Goguryeo army had not yet invaded Longcheng. Kill. Lu Feng took the lead and rushed towards the enemy camp with 1,000 Dragon City cavalry. The cavalry trampled and the ground rumbled. The patrol soldiers in the Goguryeo military camp immediately noticed the abnormality and shouted hysterically, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" The deputy commander of Goguryeo was awakened and immediately gathered the army in panic. Kill. At this time, Lu Feng had already charged in with the Dragon City cavalry. The inkjade spears were waved, and dragons roared everywhere. In the flash of light, a famous Goguryeo soldier was carried away. 1,000 Dragon City cavalry waved their spears in unison, terrifying. The attack power is irresistible. Screams come and go. Surround them. The deputy commander roared angrily. A mere 1,000 cavalry dared to attack. They were simply seeking death. Hearing this, countless Goguryeo soldiers waved their weapons and surrounded them without fear of death. They could become one of the most powerful foreign races around the Han dynasty. Not it makes no sense. At least the fighting momentum is much stronger than that of the foreign races in Liaodong. Sure enough, the wild ones are different from the domestic ones. The dragon soul is destroyed. Based on the approximate location of the commander of the Goguryeo army from the voice that just issued the order, Lu Feng directly launched his killing move. Dark clouds gathered and thunder rolled from the sky. 9 dragon shadows fell from the sky and fell into the enemy camp. A loud bang was heard, and the ground a huge hole appeared. There were countless bloody corpses in it. The blood gathered at the bottom of the pit, forming a small puddle. Damn it, surround me. The deputy commander of Goguryeo was lucky and stood just outside the attack range of Dragon Soul Destroyer. But even so, he was scared to death. He roared hysterically and fled further away. 9 items in his mind. The vivid dragon shadow lingered. Is that a dragon? The deputy commander of Goguryeo was horrified. The legendary creature actually appeared? Lu Feng glanced at the direction where the deputy commander's voice came from, and shook his head with some regret. He couldn't kill him. He took out the military talisman and shouted in a deep voice, "The prefect has ordered that the whole county's counterattack has begun. If you don't take action, when will we wait?" Although Lu Feng didn't know what tasks Li Fei had arranged for this army, he knew very well that Li Fei couldn't really cooperate with the foreigners. He must have other plans. Combined with the words of the guard of Xiangping City, it is not difficult to guess the conspiracy. Li Fei must have wanted to join forces with the Goguryeo army to destroy Dragon City, and then let them fight back to destroy the Goguryeo army. In this way, he not only eliminated Dragon City, but also destroyed it. He lost a Goguryeo army and regained the trust of the people in Liaodong. In this case, Lu Feng pretended to be Li Fei's envoy and asked this army to rebel in advance. When the Han army disguised as a Goguryeo army saw Li Fei's military symbols, without any doubt, he quickly drew his weapons and attacked the surrounding Goguryeo troops. Damn it, these damn Han people are really unreliable. The Goguryeo deputy commander was furious. He drew his weapon and killed several Han troops who were charging towards him. He said angrily, "All Han people will be killed without mercy." He is not a fool. He has always arranged for people to closely monitor these Han troops. As he issued the order, countless Goguryeo troops immediately pounced on the Han troops. Lu Feng was slightly surprised by the reaction of the Goguryeo troops. But he did not care too much. If there is a battle, the secret sentry in Tiger Mountain will definitely find out. He believes that Taishi Ci will seize this opportunity and lead troops out of the city. As he expected, when the secret sentry passed the information to Taishi Ci, he quickly made arrangements. The Lord is back, Ida Euro trademark S time to fight back. Longbowmen and Wei soldiers guarded Longcheng. All those who approached Longcheng were detained until the Lord returned to make a decision. Overlord's iron cavalry, follow me to attack and lend a helping hand to the Lord. After arranging everything, Taishi Ci got off the city wall, mounted a war horse, and galloped away with 2,000 Overlord cavalry. The Goguryeo military camp. 20,000 Liaodong troops turned against each other and started a fierce battle with 30,000 Goguryeo troops. At the same time, Lu Feng with 1,000 Dragon City cavalry, they charged back and forth among the Goguryeo army, as if they were in no one's land. The armor on their bodies looked heavy, but in fact it was lighter than the light armor of the Goguryeo cavalry. Their speed was much faster than that of the Goguryeo cavalry. The momentum of their charge was equally unstoppable. The Goguryeo soldiers could be easily killed with a wave of spears. No one could block the attack of the Dragon City cavalry. On the chaotic battlefield, the Goguryeo army was completely suppressed. The Goguryeo deputy commander even desperately, Long Chen took the opportunity to send troops and sent 2,000 cavalry to charge. If it were normal, he would definitely not turn these 2,000 cavalry in his eyes. But now, the battlefield is chaotic, and the Goguryeo army is divided into several parts, each fighting for its own war. His orders could not be conveyed to the armies in time. In other words, he no longer had the extra troops to resist the Dragon City army. He could only watch the Dragon City army rush into the battlefield, wielding spears and massacre the generals under his command. The leading general waved his halberds, like chopping melons and vegetables, unstoppable. At the same time, dragons roared from behind. The Han general wearing dark armor and holding a dark spear also waved his spear and killed him. Come here. He has no way to escape. Fight to the death. The deputy commander of Goguryeo shouted angrily. Since you can't escape, let's fight. The dragon soul kills, came from behind. He shouted loudly, followed by a loud dragon roar. The Goguryeo deputy commander looked back and his pupils suddenly shrank. An illusory dragon shadow hovered over. All the Goguryeo soldiers who were blocking the way were shot away one after another, their bodies were severely deformed and they lost their breath. Another dragon? The dragon shadow was so fast that the Goguryeo deputy commander had no time to dodge, so he could only shout loudly and wave his weapons to resist. Boom! A muffled sound was heard, and the weapon in the hand of the Goguryeo deputy commander broke instantly. The dragon shadow instantly hit his body. Click! The sound of bones breaking was heard, and the deputy commander flew backwards, blood spurting out wildly. Before he even hit the ground, he was already dead. With the death of the Goguryeo deputy commander, the morale of the Goguryeo army plummeted. He was originally at a disadvantage, but now he has no intention of fighting, and he collapsed instantly. I surrender. We surrender. The Goguryeo soldiers surrendered one after another. In their impression, the Han dynasty would not kill prisoners. As long as they surrendered, they would survive. Then the king would redeem himself. However, what he faced was the new Liaodong governor Lu Feng. He was the great Han dragon general who once shouted, "Anyone who bullies our Han people will be repaid 100-fold." After collecting the weapons of the Goguryeo prisoners, Lu Feng said calmly, "I don't need foreign prisoners." One sentence decided the fate of these Goguryeo soldiers. 3 Kingdoms, I have a job transfer palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 75. Han people, you will not die well. These Goguryeo soldiers did not expect that the Han people could be so insidious. After confiscating their weapons, they said they would not accept prisoners. Now, they are unarmed, how can they resist? If they had known this, they might as well have fought to the end. Lu Feng's face did not change, and he let the more than 10,000 officers and soldiers surrounded the Goguryeo prisoners and were not allowed to let anyone go. Then he said to Taishi Cizi, "You lead 3,000 Longcheng cavalry and kill them all without leaving anyone behind." Tai Shi hesitated slightly. "Master, do you really want to kill them all? It doesn't matter how many enemies you kill on the battlefield. But if word spreads about the massacre of prisoners, people may mistakenly think that your lord is a murderer. Especially those from aristocratic families who pride themselves on justice and are full of benevolence and righteousness. This will be very detrimental to the lord's reputation." Lu Feng said calmly. "Do you still remember what I said?" Taishi Ci was stunned for a moment, and then his face became serious. "Ci understands. Anyone who bullies the Han people will be repaid 100-fold. This is what Lu Feng said when he suppressed the aliens in Liaodong. Now the Goguryeo army has invaded Liaodong and brutalized the Han people. If you kill one of my Han people, I will kill 100 of you. Lu Feng nodded. If I can avenge the Han people, if I can protect the Han people, it is worth it even if I become a demon. The Lord's mind is not as kind as his own. Tai Shisai's eyes showed admiration. All the Han soldiers and the 3,000 Dragon City cavalry all felt excited. This is the attitude that a Han general should have. Overlord's cavalry, follow me to kill. Tai Shisai took a deep breath and led 3,000 cavalry towards the group of Goguryeo prisoners. Run! The Goguryeo prisoners were unarmed and unable to resist, and fled in an instant. However, surrounded by officers and soldiers, they had no way to escape. Screams resounded throughout the world. The massacre lasted for half an hour, and more than 20,000 Goguryeo prisoners were slaughtered. Corpses piled up like mountains and blood flowed like rivers. The strong smell of blood was nauseating. Broken limbs and broken arms were spread on the ground. The scene was horrific, like purgatory on earth. Even the officers and soldiers were pale and felt a little uncomfortable in their stomachs. They were regular troops. I have killed countless enemies before. But I have never been as cruel as today. Clear the battlefield and burn the bodies. Lu Feng could no longer change his expression and said calmly. Everyone immediately began to clean up the battlefield, and all the surviving horses were driven into the Longcheng horse farm. All the killed horses were transported to Longcheng and used as food. Goguryeu's armor, weapons, regardless of whether they were damaged or not, were all transported to the Longcheng forge. The corpses of the Goguryeo soldiers were all piled up in an open space and burned. The raging fire burned for a long time before it was extinguished. After clearing the battlefield, Lu Feng looked at the more than 10,000 officers and soldiers, said I, Lu Feng, am currently the governor of Liaodong. Li Fei, the former governor of Liaodong, colluded with foreigners and harmed the Han people. He was executed by the 9 tribes. You are acting as ordered, and I can forget everything you have done before. Now, are you following me to kill the Goguryeo army? Or go with Li Fei, the former governor of Liaodong? All the officers and soldiers looked at their respective generals. They came from various cities near Xiangping City and formed a joint army. Each city was assigned a general to lead it. Naturally, it was up to the general to make a decision. Several generals interacted with each other. After looking at it, they all came out of the crowd and said respectfully, I will naturally follow you to kill the foreigners. There is no need to choose at all. You can survive by killing foreigners with the governor. Follow the former governor Li Fei. That means you will die with him. There is no need to consider how to choose. As for the former governor of Liaodong, they also not much emotion. They just obeyed the deployment of the military symbols. Now that the military symbols are in Lu Feng's hands, they naturally have to obey Lu Feng's orders. Lu Feng nodded and said, very good, now we all enter Dragon City and line up to go to the back mountain. He wants this army to enter the transfer hall to transfer the Longbowmen and Wei soldiers. If they can't open the transfer door, it means they have bad intentions towards him. These people are Li Fei's confidants. Or they are the confidants of those who want to put themselves to death. If they really only obey the orders of the military symbols and now hold the military symbols, they should not have ill intentions towards them. In this way, the spies in this army can be investigated come out. At the same time, these are the regular troops of Liaodong, and their physical fitness is much stronger than those of the villagers. They may be able to gather 3,000 Wei soldiers. Only when all 3 major arms are full can the maximum lethality be unleashed. 3,000 Wei soldiers, and 600 Wei soldiers are a completely different concept. Promise. Several generals took the order and led 10,000 troops. Under the supervision of Taishi Ci and the Longcheng cavalry, they entered Longcheng and headed for the back mountain. At the same time, the order issued by Lu Feng in Xiangping City quickly spread throughout the country. The whole county. The magistrates of each county immediately dispatched troops and began to suppress the Goguryeo army in each county. The whole county launched a counterattack and quickly hunted down the Goguryeo troops scattered in the counties. It was not until this time that the Goguryeo commander in Liaodong was shocked to discover, the combat effectiveness of the Han army was so strong. They were invincible before, almost unimpeded, broke through the official blockade and entered the counties in Liaodong. This made him mistakenly believe that the Han army was nothing more than this. Later, the Liaodong prefect took the initiative to ask him for cooperation. He was even more convinced that the fighting power of the Han army was vulnerable. Unexpectedly, everything was an illusion. It was an illusion created by the officers and soldiers of Liaodong to deceive him. Now that the armies are scattered and unable to assemble quickly, they can only fight independently. Facing Liaodong with the army's counterattack, the Goguryeo army retreated steadily. In fact, the entire county army also held a breath. The Goguryeo army invaded Liaodong and massacred Han people, but they could only watch. They also wanted to rush out and kill Goguryeo army to rescue the Han people. But without orders, they naturally did not dare to send troops on their own. Now, the order to counterattack was issued. All the Liaodong armies were full of energy, fighting spirit was high, and their combat effectiveness was even higher than before. Kill all these damn Goguryeo people. The Han troops all over the county are full of momentum. The order of the new governor is to kill all the Goguryeo troops without taking prisoners. As long as they see the Goguryeo troops, they will rush over. Surrender. Sorry, we don't need prisoners. Those who resist, kill. Those who surrender, kill. The people in the whole county rejoiced. The Liaodong army was finally strong. Many people watched the massacre of the Goguryeo army by the Liaodong army. The scene of mountains of corpses and rivers of blood not only made them not feel any discomfort, but the crowd was furious and applauded loudly. They didn't care whether they should kill the prisoners or not. They only knew that these Goguryeo people killed many of their fellow citizens. Their hatred for the foreigners and the Goguryeo people had penetrated deep into their bones. To them, all these foreigners were dead. That's good. This way they don't have to worry anymore. Now the entire Liaodong county is in high spirits, from officials and soldiers to ordinary people. With everyone united, how can we be invincible? At this moment, the Goguryeo army felt the influence of the Han army. Terrible. We can only keep shrinking the defense line and barely resist. At the same time, at the back of Dragon City, 10,000 officers and soldiers lined up to enter the job transfer hall. Those who could not push open the job transfer door were detained by the Dragon City cavalry. Those who could push the job transfer door were detained. Those who were the most successful were given priority in the transfer of Wei soldiers. Those who failed were transferred to longbow soldiers. In the end, among the more than 10,000 officers and soldiers, there were thousands of people who had malicious intentions towards Lu Feng. The remaining people were transferred to Wei soldiers. The strength of the military soldiers and longbow soldiers has been supplemented to 3,000. The physical fitness of these regular soldiers is much better than that of ordinary villagers. Basically, 1 out of every 3 people meets the conditions for Wei's military soldiers to change their profession. Of course, these so-called job transfer conditions are only the minimum requirements. If the selection was based on the original selection model of the Wei state, I am afraid that out of the 10,000 regular troops, only a few hundred people would meet the requirements. Today, Longcheng has 9,000 troops and 3,000 Wei soldiers. Renamed Dragon soldiers. 3,000 longbow soldiers, whose names remain unchanged. 3,000 overlords cavalry, all renamed Dragon City cavalry. Although there are only 9,000 troops, they are all 7th level troops, the division of the king. With strong combat effectiveness, they will definitely shock the world. The remaining 7,000 officers and soldiers also completed the transfer of ordinary arms in the transfer hall. Their combat effectiveness is good, and they are all elite soldiers. After completing the transfer, they will become the second-level peak arms. As long as they continue to kill the enemy, you will soon be able to transfer again and become a third-level soldier. Because you are waiting for strength to transfer, you do not need to complete the transfer task, and you only need to consume the transfer points of the first-level soldier. Ordinary soldiers are limited to 10,000 people. Each time up to 10,000 people can be transferred. To transfer a first-level soldier, you need to spend 20,000 transfer points. To transfer a second-level soldier, you need to spend 40,000 transfer points. To transfer a third-level soldier, you need to spend 100,000 transfer points. If it is a class transfer order, there is no need to consume transfer points for the first transfer. For the second transfer, payment is based on the level of the transferred soldier. After completing the transfer, 1,000 people with malicious intentions were secretly executed. 7,002 the first-level soldiers stayed in Longcheng and became the defenders of Longcheng. Later, Lu Feng left Longcheng with 3 7th-level soldiers and went to Anping City. Anping City is located in the southeast of Liaodong County, and Ma Zishui comes from Anping County. Passing through this Ma Zi River was the Yalu River in later generations, leading directly to Goguryeo. The Goguryeo army entered Liaodong along the banks of Ma Zi water, and occupied Anping City as a backing. At this time, the entire county's counterattack was unstoppable. The Goguryeo commander withdrew all his troops to Anping City, resisting the Han army's attack while arranging the army's retreat. Since nothing can be done, we can only withdraw to Goguryeo. Unfortunately, he underestimated the strength of the Han army. He also underestimated Lu Feng's determination to destroy this Goguryeo army. 3,000 Dragon City cavalry, led by Lu Feng, arrived at Anping City first and took over the commander-in-chief of the Han army that attacked Anping City. After my order, the army was divided into 3 groups and blocked the west gate, north gate, and south gate of Anping City. Lu Feng gave the order, and the army quickly moved into action. They blocked the north and south gates of Anping City to prevent the Goguryeo troops in Anping City from escaping. Lu Feng, on the other hand, personally led the Dragon City cavalry to block the west gate. Only the remaining to the east gate. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 3 Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 76. The messenger quickly reported the battle report to the commander of Goguryeo. He smiled disdainfully. What's wrong with the west gate, south gate, and north gate being blocked? As long as you cross the Maji River, you can follow the river bank, go all the way east, and return to Goguryeo. When the time comes, I only need to send a small number of troops to block the stone bridge, or destroy the stone bridge, and the Han army can only catch up. Lu Feng asked the 3 armies to surround Anping City without attacking, and seemed to have missed the east gate. The Goguryeo commander stood on the west gate wall and looked at the Han army outside the city with a calm expression. Under his prior arrangements, the Goguryeo army has now retreated to the east gate in an orderly manner, passing through the stone bridge one after another. In his opinion, the commander of the Han army surrounded and refused to attack, must be thinking of a strategy to attack the city. Snort. By the time you figure out how to attack the city, our army has safely retreated. Just when he was complacent and thought that the commander of the Han dynasty was nothing more than this, a messenger rushed over and said urgently, Commander, when our army was crossing the bridge, we were attacked by the Han army and suffered heavy losses. What? The Goguryeo commander's expression changed. How many people are there in the Han army? The messenger quickly replied, come back to the commander-in-chief, there are only 6,000 Han troops, but they are all crossbowmen. They were lying in ambush on the other side, waiting for our 20,000 soldiers to cross the stone bridge before launching a surprise attack. The other side of the stone bridge was flat and there was no shelter to hide from. The lethality of its archers and crossbowmen was too powerful, and thousands of the 20,000 soldiers crossing the bridge were quickly killed. The soldiers who were still on the stone bridge were unable to advance or retreat because of the narrow stone bridge. Many were killed by the enemy, and many were trampled upon each other. Many more fell off the stone bridge and fell into the Mesa water, where their life and death were unknown. Now, our army is in chaos. The Goguryeo commander said with a gloomy face, "Why don't our archers launch a counterattack?" The messenger smiled bitterly and said, "Commander, we have launched a counterattack. But the opponent is on the other side of the river, far beyond the range of our archers." Hateful. The Goguryeo commander cursed angrily and glanced at the indifferent commander of the Han army outside the city. "It turns out that this is your goal. However, with only 6,000 people, you still want to stop my 100,000 strong army?" He said to the deputy general beside him. "The city has been covered with hay and kerosene. If the Han army attacks the city, a symbolic resistance will suffice." Then he introduced it into the city and attacked it with fire, turning it into ashes along with Anping city. The people in Anping city had already fled without a trace when they broke through. Those who didn't have time to escape were massacred by them. Now Anping city is full of Goguryeo troops. Promise. The deputy general took the order. The commander of Goguryeo looked at the commander of the Han army outside the city again and sneered. "Commander, I'm waiting for you to attack the city." Then he turned and left, deciding to personally command the army to cross the bridge. "I don't believe that there are only 6,000 people. He could still turn the world upside down." Seeing the Goguryeo commander leaving, Lu Feng said to the messenger beside him, "Send an order to the generals outside the north gate and south gate, and order them to lead the army and slowly approach the east gate. If any Goguryeo army wants to retreat to the north or south, they will be killed without mercy." Promise. The messenger left quickly. Then, Lu Feng also left slowly with 3,000 Dragon City cavalry. On the west gate wall, a trace of doubt flashed in the eyes of the Goguryeo deputy general, but he didn't think much about it. His mission was to guard Anping. If there is a large army attacking the city, he will lead them into the city and burn them to death. Since no one is attacking the city, he will naturally be happy and leisurely. Outside the east gate of Anping city, the Goguryeo commander left the city and went to the Mesa River. When they arrived at the stone bridge, almost half of the 20,000 troops on the other side had been killed. They had not even come close to the 6,000 officers and soldiers. The overwhelming long arrows and the crossbow arrows that blocked the road ahead destroyed hundreds of steps around the stone bridge. It is a death area. No matter whether they move forward, retreat, or escape to the left or right, they will definitely die. "Cavalry, rush over to me!" the Goguryeo commander shouted angrily. As long as the cavalry is allowed to cross the stone bridge while the Han army's crossbowmen are fighting fiercely with the army on the other side of the river, the battle will be decided. The cavalry is the biggest nemesis of the crossbowmen. The cavalry is too mobile. The speed is too fast. The crossbowmen can fire only 2 rounds at most, and the cavalry can rush in front of them. At that time, the crossbowmen were just fish and meat to be slaughtered. Promise. The cavalry commander immediately led the cavalry onto the stone bridge and rushed to the other side at an extremely fast speed. At this time, the stone bridge was almost blocked by the Goguryeo army that had crossed before. The Han army's crossbowmen wanted to attack the Goguryeo cavalry on the stone bridge. "We must first kill the Goguryeo army. Although their lethality is terrifying, it will take some time to kill nearly 10,000 people. This time is enough for the Goguryeo cavalry to pass the stone bridge. The stupid Han army, if blocked shooting on the stone bridge, maybe our army really can't pass through the stone bridge. Now, you just wait to die." The Goguryeo commander stood with his hands behind his hands, his face indifferent. If you can swallow these 6,000 crossbowmen, collect their equipment. Especially those 3,000 crossbows were a powerful offensive weapon that Goguryeo did not have. If we could bring Goguryeo back, what would it matter if tens of thousands of people died? Under the cover of the Goguryeo army in front, more and more Goguryeo cavalry crossed the stone bridge, charged towards the 6,000 Han army crossbowmen. This was not in Longcheng, where the terrain was narrow and one could only rush forward. Here, the terrain was flat, and the cavalry tactics were better used. They spread out in all directions, circled to both sides of the 6,000 crossbowmen at extremely fast speeds, and charged away. If these 6,000 crossbowmen turned around and attacked the cavalry on both sides, then the nearly 10,000 Goguryeo troops directly in front would march straight in. Get there at that time, without the suppression of strong crossbows and longbows, how could they escape the siege of the Goguryeo army? 1,000 dragon warriors and 1,000 longbowmen fired at both sides. Taishasai gave an order, and the army moved upon hearing the sound. 3,000 dragon warriors and 3,000 longbow soldiers were instantly divided into 3 groups. There were 1,000 dragon warriors and 1,000 longbow soldiers in the front, left, and right directions. The soldiers launched an attack. Longbow soldiers were in front, and longbow soldiers were behind, matching each other. Long arrows and crossbow arrows were seamlessly connected, killing the Goguryeo army. The Goguryeo army in front was still being shot and killed quickly, even if it was 20% less with the intensity of the attack, it was difficult for them to get close. However, there were many Goguryeo cavalry on both sides. In addition, the distance between the two sides was not very far. After 2 rounds of shooting, the Goguryeo cavalry was close. Longbow soldiers formed a formation to block the Goguryeo cavalry. Taishasai gave an order, and the dragon warriors on the left and right put away their crossbows and picked up their spears and swords. They were not just crossbowmen, they were dragon warriors. They focused on close combat, and supplemented it with long-range attacks. Kill. Seeing Long Wusha put away his crossbow, the Goguryeo cavalry commander was very excited. Without the crossbow, the crossbowmen were looking for death. Moreover, these crossbowmen actually carried the crossbows on their backs. This would undoubtedly increase their load. Affects the speed of action. Facing the light cavalry, which focuses on speed, and making such a major mistake, it would be unreasonable not to die. Prick. At this moment, an order came from the Longbow soldiers. The Longbow soldiers holding spears thrust out the spears in their hands. The weapons, which were longer than ordinary spears, directly penetrated the bodies of the Goguryeo cavalry. Cut. The dragon warriors holding swords waved their swords and cut off the legs of the galloping horses. Some of them assassinated the cavalry and some of them killed the horses. They cooperated with each other and their lethality was amazing. Soon, they fell in front of them. The bodies of countless Goguryeo cavalry and war horses were killed. This further affected the charge of the Goguryeo cavalry. Even if occasionally a Goguryeo cavalry rushed in front of the dragon warriors and hit them. But what is shocking is that as a cavalry, they could not hit them. Use a crossbow? How could this be? The commander of the Goguryeo cavalry was extremely horrified. As highly mobile light cavalry, they had only suffered heavy losses at the hands of Han spearmen. Unexpectedly, a crossbowman was killed like this time. This made him I was embarrassed and angry at the same time, but also terrified. Is the Han army too strong, or is the Goguryeo cavalry too weak? The Goguryeo commander who was watching the battle on the other side of the river also saw this scene, and his originally indifferent face suddenly darkened. The charge of the Goguryeo cavalry was actually shot by a bow. The crossbowman was broken? When did the melee ability of the crossbowman become so powerful? The commander of Goguryeo didn't know the ability of the dragon warriors. He just saw them operating powerful crossbows and thought they were crossbowmen. He couldn't figure out, a crossbow, why does the hand have such a powerful melee combat ability? Because there is a dragon warrior standing in front of him. The longbowman standing 30 steps behind the dragon warrior still bends his bow and arrows and shoots at the cavalry in front. The cavalry is riding on the horse. They were much taller than the dragon warriors, and they did not have to worry about hurting their companions. With the cooperation of the dragon warriors and the longbowmen, the casualties of the Goguryeo cavalry increased dramatically. Moreover, this time the longbowmen prepared enough long arrows, will not be used up for a while. And the 10,000 Goguryeo troops directly in front have been shot to death. Most of the dragon warriors and longbow soldiers have shifted the focus of their attack to the stone bridge. They were about to the Goguryeo troops, who took the opportunity to pass through the stone bridge, screamed in agony. Many soldiers wanted to retreat, not wanting to face the terrifying Han army crossbowmen. No one is allowed to retreat. Anyone who retreats will be killed without mercy. The Goguryeo commander roared angrily, and after personally beheading several retreating soldiers, the chaotic situation was stopped. Adhering to the principle of giving a sweet date with a stick, the Goguryeo commander shouted again, "Charge over! Anyone who kills a Han crossbowman will be rewarded with 100 taels of gold." Under the heavy reward, there must be brave men, and the Goguryeo army rushed to the other side without fear of death. However, sometimes it is not the courage that can change the outcome. Under the strong attack of the dragon warriors and longbow soldiers, the narrow stone, there is no need to aim at the bridge. All Goguryeo soldiers who stepped onto the stone bridge were shot and killed mercilessly. At this time, the penetrating power of the crossbow arrow showed its terrifying side. One crossbow arrow can penetrate several, or even dozens of people. Goguryeo soldiers. No one can step across the stone bridge with such firepower. Seeing this, the Goguryeo commander finally gave up his plan to pass through the stone bridge and said in a deep voice, "Send the order and detour to the north." The stone bridge at Mazashui is not this one, there are many more. There is no need to fight on this stone bridge. However, when he led the army to detour north, a Han army of 30,000 people appeared. Blocked in front of them. "Damn it! Turn around and retreat south." The commander of Goguryeo didn't want to tangle with the Han army, so he immediately ordered a U-turn. But when he completed the U-turn, every time he walked farther, he found another 30,000 Han army in front of him. Damn it! There are 30,000 Han troops in the north and south. It is difficult to get a good deal under attack from both sides. On the other side of the river, there are terrifying Han army archers and crossbowmen, making it impossible for them to cross the bridge. Back to the city. In desperation, the Goguryeo commander could only lead his army to the west, preparing to return to Anping city. He would defend the city and then look for opportunities to retreat. However, to his despair, a cavalry force of 3,000 men appeared in the west. The leader was none other than the commander-in-chief of the Han army. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 77. There were cavalry in front of them blocking the road, and there were 30,000 Han troops approaching on the left and right. Behind is Mazashui, and there are terrifying crossbowmen on the opposite side of the stone bridge. The Goguryeo army fell into a dilemma with no way out. The Goguryeo commander's face was gloomy and his eyes were cold. "Come over here, I want to see how a mere 3,000 cavalrymen can stop my 70,000 strong army." Making this choice was actually a helpless move. Because at present, only the 3,000 cavalry in front are the best breakthrough. Lu Feng looked calm and slowly raised the black jade gun in his hand. Dragon City Cavalry, charge! 3,000 Dragon City Cavalry gathered together for the first time. Kill! Waving his spear, he charged directly towards the 70,000 Goguryeo army. At the same time, the Han troops from the north and the south quickly moved closer to the center. "Stop them!" The commander of Goguryeo gave an order, and thousands of Goguryeo cavalry galloped out. Goguryeo was dominated by light cavalry, and almost half of the 100,000 troops were cavalry. Previously, only the cavalrymen who crossed the bridge to kill the dragon warriors and longbowmen were only 10,000. Boom! The Dragon City cavalry and the Goguryeo cavalry collided. The screams were deafening. Lu Feng took the lead, waving his inkjade spear, and dragons roared everywhere. The strong military commander's aura enveloped the spear, and the Goguryeo cavalry followed him. He fell off his horse. The 3,000 Longchen cavalry behind him brandished their spears. Although they were not military commanders, they were extremely lethal. Almost no Goguryeo cavalry could block one of their shots. Even if they could, just take another shot. As for the attack of the Goguryeo cavalry, but it is difficult to break through the defense of the Dragon City Iron Cavalry. After all, they are light cavalry, and their weapons and armor are required to be as light as possible. They rely on their strong mobility and charging momentum to kill the enemy. What they face often they were all ordinary infantry and cavalry. The armor defense of these arms was not high, and the weapons in Goguryeo's hands were enough to easily break through their defenses. But this time they encountered the Dragon City cavalry. With the defense of heavy cavalry armor, the armor is lighter than that of the light cavalry. It has super strong defense, super fast speed, and super attack power. It completely crushes the Goguryeo cavalry in all aspects, and there is no comparison at all. The charge of the Dragon City cavalry is unstoppable, killing thousands of Goguryeo cavalry. After that, he passed through the blockade of the Goguryeo cavalry and charged towards the Goguryeo commander. Damn it, stop them! The Goguryeo commander was shocked. So many Goguryeo cavalry could not stop 3,000 Han cavalry? Although the Han cavalry is very powerful, it is not that powerful. What happened to the Han in these years? It is because the Han cavalry has improved too fast. Or has the Goguryeo cavalry declined? However, no matter how hysterically he roared, the Goguryeo cavalry could not stop the charge of the Longchen cavalry. On the left and right sides, 30,000 Han troops on each side were approaching and launched an attack on the Goguryeo army. The front could not break through. The left and right Han troops surrounded and killed, the Goguryeo army was in chaos, and its momentum fell to the bottom. At the same time, the Goguryeo army on the other side of the river was slaughtered by the Longwu soldiers and Longbo soldiers led by Taishi Ci. Subsequently, under Taishi Ci's under his leadership, everyone removed most of the long arrows and crossbow arrows from the enemy corpses and reused them. Then they stepped onto the stone bridge and slowly approached the other side. The stone bridge was narrow, and Taishi Ci walked in the front, followed by 3,000 dragons. Martial soldiers and longbow soldiers are at the end. Such a formation can withstand the impact of the enemy very well. After all, the melee combat ability of the dragon warrior soldiers is much stronger than that of the longbow soldiers. The stone bridge over Mazashui is 4 meters wide. 100 steps was already beyond the range of the longbowmen. In order to maximize the lethality, Taishi Ci led the dragon soldiers and longbowmen to stop in the middle of the stone bridge. There were still 200 steps away from the other side of the river, which was far away. It is far beyond the shooting range of Goguryeo archers. But it allows longbowmen and dragon warriors to kill enemy generals to their heart's content. Shooting. Taishi Ci gave the order, and the Longwu soldiers and longbowmen immediately launched an attack. At this time, the Goguryeo army had been forced to squeeze together by the Han army on the left and right sides, and there were Dragon City cavalry in front to intercept it, and its advance was extremely slow. Long arrows and crossbow arrows pierced the sky and sank into the Goguryeo army. They did not need to aim at all. With such a dense crowd, even archers who were new to archery could easily hit the enemy. Long the arrows fall from the sky and have better coverage. Almost every long arrow can hit the enemy. However, many long arrows hit the same person. The crossbow arrows have stronger penetration. As they shuttle among the crowd, each crossbow arrow can hit the enemy. It can penetrate dozens of people. Of course, there are also unlucky people who are penetrated by multiple crossbow arrows. The Han army is divided on both sides, and the longbowmen and dragon warriors do not need to worry about hurting their companions. Just use the arrows on their bodies, shoot them all out at once. With so many slow-moving living targets, if you don't Euro trademark kill as many people as possible, you will miss this golden opportunity. At the same time, Lu Feng led 3,000 Dragon City cavalry in front, and they have appeared in the Goguryeo commander-in-chief within 10 feet. Some Goguryeo cavalry bypassed them and headed for Anping City. But Lu Feng ignored them. His target was the Goguryeo commander. He raised the Black Jade Spear again. Dragon Soul destroyed the world. Performed a killing move and came out. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered and thunder rolled from the sky. 9 dragon shadows swooped down from the dark clouds, carrying traces of thunder and lightning on their bodies. This is a dragon. The commander-in-chief of Goguryeo felt a strange movement on his head. When he looked up, he was stunned. Although he had never seen such a creature, but just taking a look, a legendary beast, a dragon, emerged in his mind. This kind of thing only exists in legends. A mythical beast that was unknown to the real or fake. At this moment, it actually appeared above his head. Although it looked a bit illusory, the terrifying power was like reality, making people breathless. The Goguryeo commander struggled to raise the sword in his hand, slashing out with all his strength. He wanted to kill the 9 swooping dragons. But everything was in vain. Boom! All 9 dragon shadows fell down, blasting a huge hole in the ground. In the center of the hole, thousands of people, the bloody corpses, were piled up in piles. The blood gurgled out and turned into a bloody puddle, soaking some corpses in it. The commander of Goguryeo was the first to be killed and was killed on the spot. The commander is dead. Seeing the commander-in-chief being bombarded by 9 dragon shadows falling from the sky, the Goguryeo army was horrified. They had never seen such a scene. How did the 9 dragon shadows appear? Most Goguryeo soldiers did not know. They only knew that the commander-in-chief was dead. Yes, they lost. And they lost completely. Surrender, we surrender. Many Goguryeo soldiers could not bear the pressure in their hearts and threw away their weapons and raised white flags to surrender. However, Lu Feng remained unmoved at all. Kill my Han people and think about it with just surrender? Lu Feng smiled coldly and said, I don't need foreign prisoners. Kill them all and leave no one behind. After receiving the order, the Han army waved their weapons again and launched a massacre. Fight with them. Failed to surrender, the Goguryeo soldiers burst out with strong fighting spirit under their strong desire to survive. A trapped beast still fighting. Lu Feng smiled lightly, but it was just not desperate enough. Under the extreme despair, the emotions will only collapse. The killing still continued, and the screams never stopped. The Goguryeo army gradually discovered that no matter how hard they tried, they could not escape the fate of being massacred. Gradually, their emotions collapsed. They became crazy and became red-eyed. They could no longer distinguish between ourselves and the enemy. They began to kill people indiscriminately. Their companions around them became crazy killing machines. They did not die in the hands of the enemy, he died under the butcher's knife of his companions. This madness seemed to be contagious, and more Goguryeo soldiers began to become crazy. Such a scene made Taishi Ci and all the Han army generals watch. I was dumbfounded. I have only heard of trapped beasts still fighting, and desperation breaks out. I have never heard of people killing each other in desperate situations. In fact, it is not difficult to understand. After all, the Goguryeo army has tens of thousands of people, but there is no commander to command. Fighting. When they found that no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't break out, The feeling of waiting for death was enough to make people collapse. Especially the soldiers in the center of the Goguryeo army. They couldn't kill the enemy and couldn't rush out. The sound in their ears was always the screams of their companions suddenly sounded, and they didn't know when it would be their turn. Tortured by this emotion, they were the first to be driven crazy. They thought that the Goguryeo soldiers on the periphery could still vent this emotion on the Han army. But they could do nothing. Their spirits collapsed and they became crazy, waving their weapons and killing indiscriminately. They kept chanting, "I will kill you, kill you." One of their former companions was hacked to death by them, and the already chaotic Goguryeo army became even more chaotic. Congratulations to the master, you have completed the 100,000 kills achievement and received the 100,000 kills gift package. Do you want to open it immediately? At this moment, Lu Feng's mind suddenly sounded the voice of the 9-level transfer elf. Lita Euro trademark S talk about it later. Now he is killing the enemy, but Lu Feng did not open the gift bag. He waved the inkjade gun and quickly killed the Goguryeo soldiers. He had no sympathy for the Goguryeo soldiers who were driven crazy. He only knew that these people had Han people in their hands. The blood of the common people. He was a ruthless demon when it came to enemies, especially foreigners. 2 hours later, tens of thousands of Goguryeo soldiers were slaughtered. Of course, many died at the hands of their own people. Many others died in those 6 in the hands of the Wan Han army. The rest were killed by Lu Feng and his direct troops. Only when these people killed the enemy could he gain the number of kills, experience and job transfer points. The deputy generals who stayed in Anping city were, after learning that the commander-in-chief was besieged and in danger, he immediately led all the troops in Anping city out of the city to rescue him. Unfortunately, he arrived too late. When he arrived, the Goguryeo army had become crazy. And they were all surrounded and killed by the Han army. So far, the 150,000 Goguryeo army was wiped out. In this battle, Lu Feng's direct army did not injure anyone. The Liaodong army suffered thousands of casualties. Compared with the record of killing 150,000 enemies, this damage is almost negligible. If this battle is passed down, if he goes out, he will definitely shock the world. However, Lu Feng did not intend to stop there. He has an even crazier plan to go straight to the royal city of Goguryeo and kill the king of Goguryeo. If he succeeds, the surrounding foreign races will be terrified. For decades, they would not even dare to enter the territory of the Han dynasty again for hundreds of years. 3 Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 78. Just do it if you want to do it, and never be sloppy. Lu Feng ordered Tai Shisai to lead the army to clear the battlefield. He only brought 3,000 Longcheng cavalry into Goguryeo territory. Soldiers need speed and cannot be delayed. At this time, Goguryeo had not received news that the entire army had been wiped out, so naturally it would not be prepared. Lu Feng wanted to raid the royal city of Goguryeo before the news spread, and kill Goguryeo by surprise. If you bring a large army, the advance will be slow and will not have the effect of a surprise attack. And if there are too many people, ETA Euro trademark S easy to be exposed. 3,000 Dragon City cavalry, just right. My lord, Ci is willing to go together. After hearing Lu Feng's plan, Taishi Ci felt that it was a bit risky, so he asked to go with him. In this way, he could at least help his lord. Lu Feng shook his head and said, although the Goguryeo army in Liaodong was destroyed, we still have potential enemies. Dragon City still needs you to guard it. Besides, you haven't seen your mother for a long time, right? During this time of suppressing the Yellow Turbans, I also took your mother over. She was following the Imperial Court's Yulin army, and expected to arrive in Liaodong in the next 2 days. Please spend more time with her. Mother. Taishi Ci's body was shaken, his eyes were slightly red, and he said movedly, "Thank you so much for your consideration, my lord. I will definitely die to repay my lord's kindness." At first, the governor of Donglei County had a grudge against the governor of Qingzhou, and the governor of Qingzhou wanted to go to the palace to impeach the governor of Donglei County. He went to stop him, but he also had a grudge with the governor of Qingzhou and had to flee to Liaodong for refuge. Since then, he has not met my mother. 1 or 2 years have passed in the blink of an eye, and I don't a Euro trademark T know how my mother a Euro trademark S health is. I originally planned to return to Donglei after the limelight was over. I didn't a Euro trademark T expect to encounter the alien riots in Liaodong and meet the Lord Lu Feng. As the saying goes, loyalty and righteousness cannot have both sides. Taishi Ci had to suppress the idea of a Euro going home again. He planned to wait for Lu Feng to come back and then ask him for some time off to go home to visit his old mother. Unexpectedly, the Goguryeo army invaded again. Now, the war is over for the time being. But Lu Feng wanted to raid the royal city of Goguryeo again. He had to stay and guard Dragon City. He thought that his wish to go home to visit his mother would be postponed indefinitely, but he did not expect that his lord gave him such a big surprise. After his mother came to Dragon City, from now on he would not have to suffer the pain of separation. He could be loyal to Lu Feng and filial to his mother. Who said loyalty and justice cannot be both? I, Taishisi, can do it. At this age, his gratitude to Lu Feng is even greater profound. Lu Feng smiled and said, "By the way, my fiancé copyright Cai Yan and his father Cai Yong will also come together." Cai Yong is a great Confucian, how could there be no one to support him when he came to Liaodong? Tai Shi Ci said seriously, "Please rest assured, my lord, Ci will definitely take good care of the scholar and his mistress Lu." Feng nodded and warned, "I am going to Goguryeo. I don't know when I can return. I a Euro trademark LL leave Longcheng and Liaodong to you. You temporarily assume the position of lieutenant of Liaodong County. This is a military talisman that can mobilize the Liaodong army. Monitor Gongsun's family closely and pay attention to Gongsun Du. In addition, I recruited a super general named Dian Wei from outside. After he arrived at Longcheng, he was asked to command the Longwu soldiers and enter Goguryeo along the Meizu River. If I am cut off by the Goguryeo army, they can clear the way for me so that I can return to Liaodong smoothly." Taishi Ci clasped his fists and said, "Ci will remember your lord's words and will definitely protect Liaodong. With you here, I feel relieved." Lu Feng patted Taishi Ci on the shoulder, then got on his horse and galloped away with 3,000 Dragon City cavalry. Taishi Ci was both civilized and military, and he had no problem guarding Liaodong. In the entire Liaodong, the greatest threat was from the Gongsun family. The Liaodong family is the leader. As long as the Gongsun family and Gongsun Du are monitored, there is no fear that they will turn the world upside down. Don't worry, my lord, Ci Ding will live up to your expectations. Looking at Lu Feng's leaving figure, Taishi Ci clenched his fists and secretly swore. It is my blessing to meet such a master in this life. A euro. Mazi River connects Liaodong and Goguryeo. Along the banks of Mazi River, you can go directly to the royal city of Goguryeo. Of course, this was when Goguryeo was unprepared. On both sides of the Meizu River, there are many Goguryeo cities and towns, but they are a certain distance away from the Meizu River. If there is a war, they will station troops on the river bank to stop the enemy. Or let the enemy go deep and then cut off the retreat, leaving the enemy in a dilemma. There was such a risk when Lu Feng took 3,000 Dragon City cavalry deep into Goguryeo. However, he was not afraid. The royal city of Goguryeo is called Nayaguachan and is located on the north bank of Meizu River. In the palace, there was singing, dancing, and laughter. The king of Goguryeo lay on the lap of several Goguryeo beauties, drinking wine and watching the song and dance performances. His hands were still very dishonestly wandering around the beautiful woman's body. "Your Majesty, this time our 150,000 warriors from Goguryeo invade the Han dynasty and Liaodong. We will definitely be able to plunder countless supplies. I heard that the big Mana Euro trademark S jewelry is very beautiful. Can you give us one as a reward?" A Goguryeo beauty said coquettishly while feeding fruit to the king of Goguryeo. Other Goguryeo beauties also agreed and acted coquettishly. The king of Goguryeo laughed and said, "Don't worry, beauties, I will wait until my Goguryeo warriors return in triumph. Come back and bring back all the jewelry for you to choose from. How about it?" "Your Majesty, come and take another one." A Goguryeo beauty put a small unknown fruit in her mouth and fed it to the king of Goguryeo. "Haha, you still understand the mood." The king of Goguryeo laughed loudly and put his head to pick it up. At this moment, a messenger rushed over and said loudly, "Your Majesty, a Han cavalry appeared 10 miles away from the royal city. There are about 3,000 people. They are very fast. Are you going to send troops to intercept us when we come to the royal city?" "Han cavalry?" The king of Goguryeo was stunned for a moment, and then smiled nonchalantly. "It seems that Liaodong is a great victory. These 3,000 cavalry are probably here to raid the royal city, hoping to force the king to withdraw the 150,000 troops who attacked Liaodong. How can you hide this little trick from me? The king is wise." Several Goguryeo beauties laughed and praised them without any sense of nervousness. The king of Goguryeo laughed twice and said, "There are only 3,000 Han cavalry, send 5,000, oh no, send 10,000, and destroy them for me. The combat effectiveness of the Han cavalry is still very strong. Even if the troops are about the same strength, they may not be able to defeat them." Therefore, the king of Goguryeo directly sent 10,000 Goguryeo cavalry at a time, intending to destroy the 3,000 Han cavalry in one fell swoop. "Promise." The messenger quickly left to convey the order of the king of Goguryeo. Soon, 10,000 Goguryeo cavalry left the royal city and galloped away. After giving the order, the king of Goguryeo forgot about the matter and started playing with the beauties around him. About half an hour later, the messenger rushed over again and said urgently, "Your Majesty, our army has been defeated, with all the casualties and casualties. 3,000 Han cavalry were unscathed and were less than 5 miles away from the royal city. Lost." The king of Goguryeo was stunned, and finally sat up from the beauty's arms. He frowned and said in disbelief, Goguryeo's 10,000 cavalry, were defeated by 3,000 Han cavalry." "Yes, your Majesty." The messenger nodded. The king of Goguryeo asked again, "Our army is completely dead and wounded, but the Han cavalry is unscathed." The messenger nodded. "The battle report from the spies is this." The king of Goguryeo looked ugly. A total of 10,000 Goguryeo cavalry were slaughtered by 3,000 Han cavalry. Moreover, the Han cavalry suffered 0 casualties. This casualty ratio was too terrible. It was too embarrassing for him. "Are they riding white horses and wearing silver armor?" The king of Goguryeo realized that this was not an ordinary Han cavalry, but probably the most elite warrior among the Han cavalry. He heard that there was a 3,000 white horse righteous followers in Yuzhu, galloping on the Xianbei battlefield invincible, so that Xianbei saw the white horse and died. "I'm scared. If Beimayakong comes, we have to be careful. Of course, if we can annihilate them all in Goguryeo, it will definitely increase the national prestige of Goguryeo. The Beimayakong who killed Xianbei and has no power to fight back, in my opinion the fall of Goguryeo. Doesn't a Euro trademark T this indirectly prove that Goguryeo Euro trademark S national power is stronger than Xianbei? This has an extraordinary effect on deterring other surrounding ethnic groups. No, they ride black horses and wear black armor." However, the messenger shattered his illusions. "Black armor, dark horse." The king of Goguryeo frowned. When did such a powerful cavalry appear in Yuzhu again? He thought for a while and said, "Pay close attention to the whereabouts of the Han cavalry and report back at any time." "Promise." The messenger left again. "Your Majesty, there are only 3,000 cavalry. I think they discovered our Goguryeo warriors and set up an ambush in advance. Otherwise, how could we have caused such huge casualties?" The beauties of Goguryeo stayed close to each other while they were in danger. The king of Goguryeo pushed away the beauties and said, "Go down, I will go to the city wall to see for myself." Being the king of Goguryeo, naturally he would not just indulge in a life of luxury and luxury. Feeling how different this Han cavalry was, he no longer had the intention to have fun with the beauties. Then, he put on his armor and took the palace guards with him. After leaving the palace, I climbed the city wall in person. "How far are the Han cavalry from the royal city?" he asked. The messenger said, "Back to your Majesty, the last time the spies came to report, the Han cavalry was less than 3 miles away from the royal city." The king of Goguryeo thought for a while and said, "Send an order and ask the lord of Heikan city to send troops to cut off the retreat of the Han cavalry. I will make sure that the Han cavalry has no chance of returning." "Promise." The messenger left quickly and galloped towards Heikan. After a long time, 3,000 Han cavalry finally appeared in the sight of the king of Goguryeo. All black armors, all black spears. Even the war horses were wrapped in black armor. Heavy cavalry. The king of Goguryeo was stunned for a moment. Only the heavy cavalry would wrap their war horses in armor. The light cavalry pursued speed and would not wrap their war horses in armor. At most, they would just put a piece of light armor on the head of the war horse. Send another 10,000 cavalry to attack, outflank them in a roundabout way, and do not engage in direct confrontation with them," the king of Goguryeo said in a deep voice. The charge of the heavy cavalry was very terrifying, and a head-on confrontation was bound to fail. But precisely because the charge was so strong, the heavy cavalry turned very slowly. As long as the light cavalry went around to attack, it would be difficult for the heavy cavalry to attack in a short time. Turn around and launch a counterattack. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. 3 Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 79. The conflict between arms is only relative, and it depends on how the commander of the armies responds. In a head-on confrontation, light cavalry is no match for heavy cavalry. However, in a spacious battlefield, light cavalry is far more flexible than heavy cavalry in attacking and killing in a roundabout way. In the view of the king of Goguryeo, the 10,000 Goguryeo cavalry sent out before must have suffered heavy losses in a head-on confrontation with the Han cavalry, which resulted in almost the entire army being annihilated. He, the king of Goguryeo, was also killed out of thousands of troops. The ability to command troops is not weak, how could you not have thought of this? However, the king of Goguryeo soon discovered to his horror that the situation on the battlefield was completely different from what he had imagined. 10,000 Goguryeo cavalry detoured from both sides and returned to the rear of the Han cavalry. The Han cavalry began to change direction. The cavalry's turning direction does not mean stopping and turning on the spot. That would greatly reduce the power of the cavalry's charge, which would mean death on the battlefield. The cavalry's turn was to circle. This can maintain the momentum of the charge and complete the change of direction. The Han cavalry changed its direction, and the Goguryeo cavalry naturally had no choice but to change its direction accordingly. At this time, the king of Goguryeo was surprised to find out. As light cavalry, the Goguryeo cavalry could not turn as fast as the Han heavy cavalry. How can this be? The king of Goguryeo was shocked. When did the turning speed of heavy cavalry become so light and fast? Little did he know that although the Longcheng cavalry wore heavy cavalry armor, the armor was lighter than the light armor of the Goguryeo cavalry. The speed of changing direction and speed is faster than the Goguryeo cavalry. When he was puzzled, the Han cavalry suddenly increased in speed and completed the turn with lightning speed. Moreover, it also appeared on the side of the Goguryeo cavalry. Kill! Lu Feng waved his jade spear and led 3,000 Longcheng cavalry to charge at the Goguryeo cavalry. He waved his spears one after another and pierced a famous Goguryeo cavalryman. Because he was attacking from the side, the Goguryeo cavalry could only resist sideways. This posture greatly reduced the combat effectiveness of the Goguryeo cavalry. They were defeated by the Longcheng cavalry almost instantly, and passed through the Goguryeo cavalry with an unstoppable force. The Goguryeo cavalry was forcibly divided into two halves. The Longcheng cavalry was not fast. Stopped and turned again in a circle. They charged towards the half of the Goguryeo cavalry in front. At this time, the Goguryeo cavalry had just completed their first turn. This created a very passive situation. The Dragon City cavalry appeared in front of them. Behind. Kill! Lu Feng led the Longcheng cavalry to charge forward and launched an attack from the rear of the Goguryeo cavalry. The Goguryeo cavalry was attacked from the rear and was unable to resist. They also wanted to get out of the predicament by turning like the Longcheng cavalry. Unfortunately, their turning speed was poor. Compared with the Dragon City cavalry, it was too slow. The Dragon City cavalry bit the Goguryeo cavalry tightly, making it impossible for them to escape. At the same time, they waved their spears and quickly killed the enemy. The sound of horse hooves and screams were mixed, and the dust was flying. The ground rumbled. The king of Goguryeo looked gloomy, but he was helpless. He could only watch helplessly as the Dragon City cavalry devoured all the Goguryeo cavalry bit by bit. He did not even dare to withdraw his troops because the Han cavalry was too fast. If the city gate is open to welcome the Goguryeo cavalry into the city, it is likely that the Han cavalry will take the opportunity to rush into the city. At that time, it will be a devastating impact on the royal city. For the sake of the overall situation, he can only sacrifice these 10,000 cavalry. As long as holding the city gate, no matter how strong the Han cavalry was, it would be impossible to break through the royal city. As long as they ran out of food, they would be able to break through without attacking. What surprised the king of Goguryeo was that after killing all the Goguryeo cavalry, the Han cavalry charged towards the royal city again. Come! Do they still want to attack the city? Cavalry sieges are rare in ancient and modern times. There is almost no pure cavalry to attack the city. Without siege ladders and siege vehicles, the cavalry can't fly up the city wall. Or, they embraced the flesh and blood of the cavalry and smashed open the city gate? Isn't that a joke? Archers shoot! The king of Goguryeo ordered in a deep voice. The archers on the royal city immediately bent their bows and launched an attack. An overwhelming rain of arrows poured down, covering the entire cavalry. I don't believe you can survive such a dense attack. The king of Goguryeo's eyes are cold. At this time, Lu Feng was still 60 steps away from the royal city. He waved his black jade spear and chopped off all the arrows around him. Behind him, the Dragon City cavalry also waved their spears to resist the arrows. Most of the arrows were struck by they destroyed, even if 1 or 2 arrows occasionally fell on the armor, they could not break through the armor's defense. How could these ordinary archers break through the armor of heavy cavalry outside the effective range? Ordinary archers, the effective range is between 30 and 45 steps. The so-called effective range is the range that is enough to kill the enemy. If the distance is too far, the strength contained in the arrow is insufficient, and it is difficult to break through the armor of the soldiers. 5 At a distance of 60 steps, it is simply a dream to break through the armor of the Dragon City cavalry. Stop! Lu Feng asked the Dragon City cavalry to stop 50 steps away, then looked at the king of Goguryeo on the city wall, and said calmly, "Do you know Chinese? Let your king, Nan Wu Yumo, come out to see me." The King of Goguryeo stood with his hands behind his back and said in Chinese, I am the king. Who are you? How dare you lead 3,000 cavalry to raid our royal city of Goguryeo? Do you want to force me to withdraw my troops? I can tell you clearly that I will never retreat. Lu Feng was slightly startled. Is this guy the king of Goguryeo? He thought he was the guard of the royal city before. But after hearing what the king of Goguryeo said, he immediately laughed and said, you are overthinking. The 150,000 Goguryeo army has been killed by this general. Light. This general is the Grand Administrator of Liaodong of the Han Dynasty and the Dragon General of the Han Dynasty. I am here just to kill you. The Great Han Dragon General? Are you here to kill me? The king of Goguryeo looked up to the sky and laughed, you still want to break through my royal city with only 3,000 cavalry, I am here, but I want to see how you kill me. Then just watch. Lu Feng smiled indifferently, held up his black jade spear, and galloped towards the royal city alone. Shoot him. The king of Goguryeo looked excited. This Han general was so stupid that he rushed over alone. As long as he was killed, the Han cavalry collapsed. The archers skillfully bent their bows and nocked arrows, and launched at Lu Feng. Attack. An overwhelming rain of arrows poured down from the sky, making people's scalp numb just by looking at it. Lu Feng's expression remained unchanged, and he used the Dragon Soul Spear skill to destroy all the arrows around him. There were no arrows within a radius of 1 foot. Can get close. What a powerful martial skill. Is that the sound of dragon roar? The king of Goguryeo's eyes narrowed, and he was a little shocked by the set of martial arts that could emit the sound of dragon roar. However, he was still not too worried. How could a mere person, no matter how strong his martial arts skills, be able to fly up the city wall? Lu Feng galloped. He came and appeared within 10 feet of the royal city in the blink of an eye. He raised his head and looked at the king of Goguryeo, with his black jade spear raised high. Dragon Soul, destroy the world. With a loud shout in his heart, he displayed the 5th level skill. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered and thunder rolled from the sky. Has the sky changed? The king of Goguryeo and many Goguryeo soldiers looked up at the sky with surprise on their faces. The sound of dragon roars sounded, and the shadows of 9 dragons looming among the dark clouds. What is that? Dragon. Everyone was horrified. How could this kind of mythical beast that only existed in legends appear here? A cruel smile appeared on the corner of Lu Feng's mouth, and he swung down the black jade spear. Suddenly, 9 dragon shadows swooped down. On his body there was also a trace of thunder and lightning. The deafening sound of dragon roars seemed to rise from the hearts of everyone, making people forget to avoid. 9 dragon shadows swooped down and fell into the wall of the royal city. There was a loud bang, and the ground shook violently. More rubbles flew everywhere and dust rose everywhere. When everything calmed down, the section of the city wall where the king of Goguryeo was located was blown down. A huge hole appeared in front of everyone. The king of Goguryeo and the nearby guards were all bombed to death, and their bodies were bloody. The king is dead. The surrounding Goguryeo soldiers were all horrified. Their king was killed by 9 dragon shadows falling from the sky right in front of their eyes. This scene caused a huge psychological shadow on them. Those who bully our Han people will end up like this. Lu Feng said loudly, then turned his horse's head and galloped away with 3,000 Dragon City cavalry. There is a difference between a country and an army. If an army kills its commander, it is very likely that the army will be defeated. Collapse. But killing the king of a country will at most demoralize the country and plunge it into civil strife. It is impossible for the country to collapse. When the king dies, his descendants, and even his descendants, want to ascend to the throne. Goguryeo is bound to fall into civil strife. The fastest way to ascend to the throne is to kill the man who killed the king of Goguryeo. Human general. Therefore, Lu Feng didn't stay much. After killing the king of Goguryeo, he galloped away with the Dragon City cavalry. The army of the king of Goguryeo was in great confusion because of the death of the king of Goguryeo. No one organized a force to pursue them, and they watched the Dragon City cavalry fly away. After a long time, the son of the king of Goguryeo learned that his father had been killed. While arranging people to deal with the affairs of the royal city, he sent troops out of the city to pursue him. At this time, Lu Feng had already appeared in Heikan territory with the Dragon City cavalry. On the river bank ahead, 50,000 Heikan troops were waiting in full formation. On the order of the king of Goguryeo, they led troops to intercept the retreat of the Han cavalry. At this time, when he saw the Han cavalry galloping towards him, the Heikan guard immediately shouted, "Get ready to fight. The heavy infantry comes forward and stop this Han cavalry for me." As the Heikan guard issued the order, a group of several soldiers, thousands of infantrymen wearing heavy armor, slowly walked out. Goguryeo not only had cavalry, but also heavy infantry. This is one of the reasons why they can intimidate the surrounding tribes. Heavy infantry was used to deal with Han cavalry. They have thick armor and can withstand the charge of Han cavalry very well. Once the Han cavalry is forced to stop, it will suffer a devastating attack from the Goguryeo army. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 80. Lu Feng frowned slightly when he saw the thousands of heavy infantry standing in front of him. This group of heavy infantrymen each had a shield and a spear. Although this spear is shorter than the spears in the Han army, it still has a strong deterrent effect on the cavalry. The charge of the Dragon City cavalry is powerful, but because of this, they may suffer more terrible injuries when they collide with this heavy infantry. Moreover, even if they get through the heavy infantry blockade, the charge will be reduced or even forced to stop. Although the Dragon City Iron Cavalry increased its speed very quickly, it could not reach its peak speed in such a short distance, and its impact on the subsequent Goguryeo army was not that strong. Since this army has been waiting here for a long time, it must have made a complete plan to deal with the cavalry. At present, it seems that only the heavy infantry may be an obstacle to the Dragon City cavalry, but no one knows if there are any backups behind them, so it is better to be careful. Moreover, the interception location chosen by the opposing general is very beneficial to them. On the left is Mazishui, and on the right is a big mountain. The only passable section of the road has been blocked by the Goguryeo army. If you want to pass, you must break through the blockade of the Goguryeo army. Under normal circumstances, Lu Feng could use Dragon Soul Destruction to directly destroy this heavy infantry. But it had been used once before to kill the king of Goguryeo. It was also used once outside Anping city. I have used it twice today, which consumes a lot of energy. If he used it forcefully again, it would probably cause damage to Lu Feng's spirit. And the life-killing power of the Dragon Soul is not enough to destroy thousands of heavy infantry. Stop! Lu Feng gave an order, and the 3,000 Dragon City cavalry stopped in unison. The movements were neat and tidy, without any sloppiness. Going forward, they entered a narrow area. If the enemy also appeared behind them, they would be in a dilemma. 3,000 cavalry stood there quietly, motionless. The Heikan guard who was blocking the road was not in a hurry when he saw this. He did not order the army to advance. He knew his advantage and could only rely on this narrow section of road to force the enemy forward. Stop the Han cavalry. If it is in another spacious place, the Han cavalry can completely bypass the heavy infantry and directly attack the army in the rear. In that case, even if the Han cavalry is finally eliminated, it will suffer greater losses. Moreover, he believed that Wang Chen would definitely send troops to pursue it. By then, the Han cavalry would be trapped in a flanking situation with no way to advance or retreat. Lu Feng, on the other hand, was not in a hurry either. He needed more time to regain his energy in order to it has reached the level of casting the third dragon soul to destroy the world, and it will not cause any damage to one's own spirit. Neither side launched an attack, just taking the opportunity to recover their energy. The entire battlefield fell into an unusually strange silence. I don't know how long it took, there was the sound of horse hooves from behind. The Royal City Army finally arrived. "General, Wang Cheng's army has arrived, let's kill them," Vice General Heiken suggested. General Heiken shook his head and said, "No, we can just stay here. If he rushes out now, he will still give the other side an opportunity to take advantage of it. What he has to do is to block this narrow road and prevent the Han cavalry from escaping. The order given to him by the king of Goguryeo is to kill this Han cavalry. All the cavalry are left behind, and no one can be let go. Although this strategy is a bit conservative, it is the safest. It's quite a bit firm." Seeing that Heiken's army had not moved for a long time, Lu Feng showed a hint of surprise on his face. He raised his black jade spear and said, "Dragon City Iron Cavalry, charge with me." After this period of rest, his energy has recovered a lot, and he can barely perform the third Dragon Soul destruction. As for the Royal City Army behind him, he doesn't need to pay attention to it at all. "Can't you bear it anymore?" Heiken's guard showed a smile of victory on his face. In this narrow section of road, he could only charge hard. He wanted to see how many Han cavalry were left after a round of charge. 100 paces the distance was not far for the Dragon City cavalry. In an instant, they appeared within 30 steps of the thousands of heavy infantry. Lu Feng raised the black jade spear and resolutely used the 5th level skill Dragon Soul Destruction. Dark clouds gathered. Thunder rolled from the sky. 9 dragon shadows fell from the sky and landed in the heavy infantry camp with a bang. The heavy infantry camps were relatively close to each other and were almost completely enveloped by the 9 dragon shadows. During this period, there was not even a scream. "Hear it?" When everything calmed down, the Heiken guard looked again and saw a large pit where the heavy infantry was. The width of the pit covered almost the entire road section, with only 2 sides left for riding. The path passed through. In the large pit, thousands of heavy infantry were piled up in a mess, bloody. The blood gathered into puddles, soaking most of the corpses. 9 dragon shadows fell from the sky, killing thousands of heavy infantry. Everyone, their faces were dull and unable to react. This scene had completely subverted their cognition. When they came to their senses, Lu Feng had already led the Dragon City cavalry through the pit along the narrow paths on both sides, heading towards Heiken. The main force of the army charged away. Crossbowmen at the ready. Heiken's guard's face became extremely gloomy. Those thousands of heavy infantry were the fruits of his decades, and the annual maintenance costs were a lot. Now, the entire army has been wiped out before even killing a single enemy. His heart was bleeding. These damn Han cavalry must be killed. Following his order, the infantry in front of the army quickly spread to both sides, revealing thousands of crossbowmen in the middle. Of course, there were only a dozen strong crossbows hidden in them. These were what they had snatched from the Liaodong army when they invaded Liaodong. In order to snatch these dozen strong crossbows, they lost a lot of troops. Because the strong crossbows were too large, there were few, so they were not placed at the front. Instead, they planned to let the heavy cavalry consume a wave of Han cavalry first, slow down their charge speed, and then use crossbows to attack. But I didn't Euro trademark T expect that the heavy cavalry had not yet exerted their combat effectiveness. Was wiped out. Sure enough, he had a backup plan. However, this distance was enough. Lu Feng sneered and stabbed out the ink jade spear. The dragon soul was life-threatening. An illusory dragon roar circled out and rushed into the crossbow. In the hand. Bang bang bang. Before a famous crossbowman could launch an attack, he was knocked away. If you look carefully, you will find that their bodies have been severely deformed. Those strong crossbowmen standing at the front are even more. First of all, no one is spared. Damn it! Who is he? Seeing this scene, the guard of Heiken's face changed drastically and his eyes were horrified. Such terrifying martial arts and such terrifying attack power were simply unheard of and unseen by him. Report. At this moment, a messenger came quickly. General, the Han army appears from behind, numbering about 3,000 people, all wearing heavy armor, coming quickly. Wearing heavy armor? The heavy infantry of the Han dynasty? The Heiken guard asked in a deep voice, coming quickly. Are you sure you didn't use the wrong word? The messenger quickly returned back to the general. Their speed is extremely fast, they don't look like heavy infantry at all. Heiken's guard looked at the Han cavalry galloping ahead, and said solemnly to the deputy general beside him, you lead 10,000 archers to intercept them. Promise. The deputy general took the order and left quickly. Let me kill the rest. Then, the defender of Heiken pulled out his weapons and charged with 20,000 troops. Now there is no other way but to bite the bullet and attack. I just hope that the Royal City Army in front can join the battlefield soon. However, although the Royal City Army, they have arrived. But the Big Pit has greatly reduced their marching speed. The paths on both sides can only be passed by one horse. It will not be possible for tens of thousands of troops to pass through in a short time. It will take some time for them to join the battlefield. Time. The densely packed Goguryeo army occupied the entire road section. Lu Feng led the Dragon City cavalry to fight all the way. It would take some time to break out of the encirclement. However, without the crossbowmen and heavy infantry, the remaining Goguryeo army, there is nothing to be afraid of. The screams resounded through the sky, and the Goguryeo army was quickly massacred. When the Heiken defender was shocked by the power of the Han cavalry, the messenger returned again and said urgently, General, our army has 10,000 infantry archers. Almost the entire army was wiped out, and the enemy army was unscathed and approaching the main force of our army at an extremely fast speed. 10,000 archers were wiped out so quickly? The Heiken guard was shocked and murmured, are you sure the opponent is heavy infantry, not heavy cavalry? There are 10,000 infantry and archers in total. How could they be wiped out by the opponent's mere 3,000 heavy infantry? If it were 3,000 heavy infantry, just like the 3,000 Han cavalry in front of him, he would still understand. But how did 3,000 heavy infantrymen kill 10,000 archers? Is their heavy armor so tight and seamless that they can completely withstand the attack of our bows and arrows? No. Even so, the arrows carried on the arrows contain powerful. The strength of the heavy infantry is enough to knock down the Han cavalry. The fallen heavy infantry basically has no chance to get up. The heavy infantry wears heavy armor. Once the heavy infantry falls to the ground, it often requires many companions to pull it up. Stand up again. But on the battlefield, there is not so much time. Those who fall can only be abandoned. The messenger said urgently, General, the Han army is indeed heavy infantry, and they each have a powerful crossbow. Before our army could reach the Han army, we had already lost thousands of people. The remaining thousands of people finally rushed in front of the Han army, but were easily killed by them. Some of them held spears and some held swords. Stab them with spears and cut them with swords, and no one can come near them. Especially the leading Han general, wielding double halberds, was even more lethal. There is no one in our army who can take his blow, including the general's lieutenant. As soon as the words fell, a shrill scream came from behind the army. It was obvious that the Han heavy infantry they were talking about had come to kill them. Haha, it comes at the right time. Lu Feng also noticed the commotion behind Heiken's army, and immediately guessed that Dian Wei was probably leading the Longwu soldiers.